what he called revisionist history. I told him that I was unfamiliar with that term, but that I would start reading as he suggested. My friend was introducing me to the view that holds that much of what we have been taught simply is not true, that history needs to be revised. And I had to admit that this was something that I was totally unfamiliar with. I had graduated from the University of Arizona after investing 4 years of my life in, quote, being educated, end quote, and I had to admit that I had not even been introduced to this competing theory. For the first time in my life, I started questioning what I had been taught. 45 years of research since then has convinced me that my friend was right. History needs to be revised, but I could not find the one book that explained the revised American history. So in 1985, I wrote the book myself. The Unseen Hand is 488 pages long and is still being reprinted. It is considered by many to be the finest examination of the conspiratorial view of history ever written, and has been praised by PhDs and high school students. But not everyone agrees. A few years ago, I received a letter from the Food and Drug Administration that I had to put the following label on each copy of this book that I sold. And this is what that label has to say. Warning, may cause drowsiness. Well, I want you to know that I believe the book and those who like the book, and not the Food and Drug Administration. So what you're about to hear will have to undo all of what you have been taught in the past about those who created this nation, known as the United States of America. By the way, this is not a typographical error. The word United in the Declaration of Independence is not capitalized. It might be important now for me to give you a little more personal background so that you can know why I believe we have been deceived. I have been a student of history for over 40 years, and my research has shown me that there is a massive conspiracy at work in this world. And to show you how they have managed our past, I would like you to know a little bit more about my first book, The Unseen Hand, an Introduction to the Conspiratorial View of History. This book examines the evidence that the major events of the past, the wars, revolutions, and depressions, have been caused intentionally years in advance by an evil conspiracy. I call this view the conspiratorial view of history, and it is definitely not the view held by the majority of the historians today. The more traditional view of history is called the accidental view, and this view holds that the major events of the past have occurred by accident. No one really knows why these events happen, they just do. It might be appropriate at this time to define the word conspiracy as two or more people meeting in secret with an evil purpose. And to show you that this conspiracy is real, I would like to discuss the testimony of a former President of the United States, Bill Clinton. I want you to know that this president told us on a live national broadcast in 1992 that there was a conspiracy and that he had been elected president because he was a supporter of it. And to start the discussion, I would like to show you a book that the former President and Vice President Al Gore wrote in 1992, entitled Putting People First. And on page 217 of this book, Bill Clinton provided us with the transcript of his acceptance speech he delivered on July the 16th, 1992, when he accepted the nomination of his party as President of the United States. And on page 231, this is what he said. As a teenager, I heard John Kennedy's summons to citizenship. And then, as a student at Georgetown University, I heard that call clarified by a professor I had named Carol Quigley. We now have to go back a few years to the summer of 1963 when Bill Clinton was selected to participate in a thing called Boys Nation, held each year in Washington, D.C. to expose some of next year's senior students to life in the political arena. This is a picture of young Bill Clinton shaking the hand of President John Kennedy in the Rose Garden of the White House. This picture had to be taken during the summer of 1963 because, as you know, President Kennedy was assassinated in November of that year. As you know, Bill Clinton was elected President of the United States in 1992. And to acknowledge the defeat of George Bush, Time magazine named Bill Clinton Man of the Year in January of 1993. By the way, please notice what Time did when they placed Bill Clinton's picture in front of the letter M in the word Time. They strategically placed his head in such a way as to show the two lines of the letter M as being horns on top of his head. Were they trying to tell us something? But in truth, Time magazine should have named these two men as Men of the Year, President John Kennedy and Professor Carol Quigley, the two men who made Bill Clinton President of the United States. Just so you know, I want to apologize to Time magazine. I took one of their covers and cut out its picture and made this cover myself. I don't want to get sued for claiming they made a cover when they didn't. Let me now discuss how these two men made Bill Clinton President of the United States. According to this U.S. News and World Report article in 1992, Bill Clinton graduated from high school, Hot Springs High School, in 1964. He then went to Georgetown University later that year, and if he completed his studies in 4 years, as he did, he would have graduated in 1968. Let me show you what Dr. Quigley taught young Bill Clinton while he was at Georgetown. Dr. Quigley wrote this book entitled Tragedy and Hope in 1966 when Bill Clinton was a student at Georgetown. This is a poor quality photocopy of the Georgetown Alumnus magazine for the winter of 1993, meaning 25 years after Bill Clinton graduated. It says that the book entitled Tragedy and Hope was required reading for Dr. Quigley's courses. That meant that Bill Clinton read this book while he was at Georgetown, and we can now read what Bill read. The inside dust cover